Medical facilities consist of at least 3 sickbay wards, the main one being located on Deck 12, and even one being located in the star drive section of the ship. Several med labs, surgical suites, laboratories, physical rehabilitation bays, and a morgue. An emergency biosupport unit was located directly adjacent to the main sickbay and was used for patients with severe burn injuries or other conditions requiring a life support unit.
An arboretum was also present aboard ship and was capable of growing and studying a wide variety of plant life. This area also doubled as a social area. One of the coolest features of this ship was the Cetacean labs located on decks 13 and 14. Among the crew, these facilities are referred to as the dolphin tanks, the aquatics labs, or even Cetacean ops. While these parts of the ships were unfortunately never seen, they were confirmed in dialogue twice and are mentioned in the TNG technical manuals and seen on the Enterprise D blueprints. These tanks house any cetaceans that may be serving or visiting aboard ship, as some member worlds of the Federation had cetacean species that were in fact sentient. In fact, 12 Atlantic and Pacific bottlenose dolphins were housed there, as well as 2 orcas known as Trekyards whales, who were actually considered part of the crew. They acted as a guidance and navigation specialist and consultation team, and supervised the crew of 12 dolphins, who together used the Cetacean Navigation Laboratory located near the foremost section of the saucer to aid the crew in 3-dimensional navigational calculations. As they live in an entirely 3D environment, and as such, have a much better grasp of such concepts which are required in navigating and traversing 3-dimensional space. All theoretical topics in navigation are studied by these elite specialists, and their recommendations for system upgrades are implemented by Starfleet. The dolphins could even be used to explore the oceans of any worlds that the vessel may be visiting during its mission of exploration. There were even 4 large Cetacean lifeboats which could be launched in the case of catastrophic emergency. These facilities were also used by the crew for recreational diving and scuba activities.
The ship housed over 100 separate scientific research labs, which generally share the same design, but could be used for any number of specific scientific studies. Some, however, contained extremely specialized equipment. Stellar cartography was located on Deck 9 and spanned 3 decks, and consisted of walls which used holographic technologies to project 3D star charts or other stellar phenomenons around or in front of the user.
Galaxy-class vessels had 20 transporter rooms located throughout the ship, 6 personnel transporters known as transporters 1 through 6, 4 large and 4 smaller cargo transporters, and 6 emergency transporters. Many of the main transporter units had an effective range of up to 40,000 kilometers, 4 of which were located on Deck 6 in the saucer section, while 2 more were on Deck 14 in the star drive section. There were also several larger and lower resolution cargo transporters, 4 located in the Deck 4 cargo bay complex, and another 4 located on Deck 38-39 cargo bay complexes. These units were generally designed for operation at the molecular non-life form resolution for cargo use only, but could be set to the quantum or life form resolution if desired. There were also emergency transporters that were designed to operate at lower power settings, but only had a range of around 15,000 kilometers, depending on the available power.
There are also 3 shuttle bays aboard each Galaxy-class starship, supporting many varieties of shuttlecraft. The main shuttle bay was located on Deck 4 in the saucer section. This shuttle bay is so massive that if an explosive decompression occurred, the air within could actually propel the ship forward. Taking up almost the entire middle section of Deck 4, there was also a shuttle lift for shuttle storage and repairs located on Deck 5. 2 smaller shuttle bays, Shuttle Bay 2 and 3, were located on Deck 13 in the engineering hull, and these were much smaller shuttle bays, capable of only holding around 3 or 4 shuttles at any given time. They also had a shuttle lift located between them that provided storage to shuttle repair facilities on Deck 14 as well.
Also a standard equipment is the captain's yacht, at a length of 18 meters, width of 10 meters, and an overall height of 8 meters. This is a small auxiliary craft, quite a bit larger and more comfortable than a standard shuttle. The one on the Enterprise was known as the Calypso. It is docked to the underside of the saucer section and used primarily for diplomatic missions or shore leave for the captain and his guests, and could comfortably accommodate up to 8 people.
used primarily to transport dignitaries to and from a planet's surface where normal transporters' use was not possible or welcomed. The yacht was divided into 2 decks, with the lower deck housing the impulse propulsion drive and landing legs, as well as entry and egress platforms on both ends, used for planetary landings. The upper deck had 2 moderate staterooms, flight crew bunks, comfortable seating area, and a galley. This Galaxy-class version of the captain's yacht was not capable of warp speeds, like its successor, the Crusoe, which was the version used in the Sovereign-class Enterprise. It could, however, be launched from its parent ship at speeds as high as warp 7.
Most of the crew quarters were located in the ship's saucer section in order to provide safety for civilian and non-essential personnel during a saucer separation. However, the engineering hull also contained crew quarters, generally housing engineering personnel and their families. Pets, including cats, dogs, and various other species, were also allowed aboard ship. Some of the various crew quarters aboard consisted of junior officers' quarters. These small quarters were located on the interior of the ship and lacked windows. These were comprised of a living area, a bedroom, and a bathroom. Crew members of lieutenant junior grade were given their own quarters. Ensigns, however, were required to share quarters. The living area contained a replicator terminal and was customizable with a variety of furniture and decorative options. Not all of the crew were human, however, as there were over 13 different species serving aboard, including Bajoran, Benzite, Betazoid, Alorian, Klingon, Mapian, and Vulcans, among others. As a result of this, only 10% of the living quarters could be modified to Class H, K, or L conditions, with a further 2% capable of being modified to Class N and Class N2, even though the rest of the ship was set to the Class M environmental condition.
Next up were the officers' quarters. These lined the edge of the saucer section and contained a living area, a bedroom, and a bathroom area as well. These were generally reserved for lieutenant commanders and above. Similar quarters were also available to enlisted or civilian personnel with families. And lastly, the captain's quarters were located on Deck 8, which were similar to the officers' quarters, but was slightly larger. This was also located at the very front or leading edge of the saucer, 2 decks directly above, 10 forward. The captain had a large desk area, work terminal, and the VIP and deck pilot quarters also shared this similar layout.
Galaxy class carried 16 holodecks, which were located on decks 9, 10, and 11, as well as a phaser range on deck 12. This phaser range was used by security officers or command crew to hone their marksmanship skills. Deck 12 had a large gymnasium, which included a martial arts area, aerobatic studio, Parisi Squares area, squash court, and a fencing room. 3
computer cores on board used isolinear storage devices that utilized faster-than-light processing drive technologies. This was achieved by incorporating a series of miniature subspace field generators. The 2 main cores were located in the source section, taking up spaces on decks 5 through 14. The third, or secondary core, was located in the secondary hull between decks 30 and 37. Any single core was capable of operating all computer functions required to operate the entire ship. The data storage capacity for each core was 129,024 gigaquads of data with a memory access speed of 4,600 kiloquads per second, and was running the newest operating system of the day, Windows 12. No, LCARS, or Library Computer Access and Retrieval System, software version 40274. Located at the top of each core was a systems monitoring room where diagnostics and maintenance operations could be performed. The computer core interfaced with all the ship systems via an optical data network, or ODN.
The standard Galaxy-class main deflector dish is located along the forward portion of the secondary hull, and is located just forward of the primary engineering spaces. Composed of a molybdenum-duranium mesh panel over a duranium framework, the dish can be manually moved 7 2/10 degrees in any direction off the ship's z-axis. The main deflector dish's shield and sensor power comes from 3 graviton polarity generators located on deck 34, each capable of generating 128 megawatts, which fed into a pair of 550 millicochran subspace field distortion amplifiers. As well as being a primary deflector dish used to deflect stellar matter, it also included a very impressive sensor and scanner suite embedded in the main deflector's housing, including EM scanners, graviton scanners, life form analysis, subspace optical, thermal, and long-range scanners. Wow, that's a lot of scanners.
Hey, it was the best of the day. That was the point. The ship's tractor beam was a multi-phase subspace graviton beam used to directly manipulate objects from a sub-micron to macroscopic level at any relative bearing. This was of course used for the towing and manipulation of objects primarily, but could also be used in a tactical manner, such as pushing ships or objects into one another. The emitter is directly mounted to the primary members of the ship's framework to lessen the effects of subspace shearing, inertial potential imbalance, and mechanical stresses.
The tractor emitter is built around two-phase 16-megawatt graviton polarity sources, each feeding 475 millicochran subspace field amplifiers. Phase accuracy is within 2 7/10 arc seconds per microsecond. Each emitter can gain extra power from the structural integrity field by means of a molybdenum jacketed waveguides. The subspace fields generated around the beam when the beam is used can envelop objects up to 1,000 meters, lowering the local gravitational constant of the universe for the region inside the field and making the object much easier to manipulate. Effective tractor beam ranges varies with payload mass and distance. The primary tractor emitters can be used with a payload approaching 7.5 million metric tons at less than 1,000 meters. Conversely, the same forces can be imparted to an object massing about 1 metric ton at ranges approaching 20,000 kilometers.
One of the most notable features of the Galaxy-class design was its ability to saucer separate. This is an emergency maneuver performed by some Federation vessels, and while this was prominent with starships of the past as well, this procedure was very dangerous and only used as a last resort in the case of catastrophic emergency. The Galaxy-class enabled the ability of saucer separation to retract without the aid of a starbase or repair facility, as that was required in the past. This was due to the docking latches that retracted when separated and raised into position to lock the two sections together upon reintegration. Although these devices are extremely rigid and are designed to bear tremendous structural loads, they are reinforced by the energy of the ship's structural integrity field, which, as mentioned earlier, helps the entire ship withstand the stresses of spaceflight.
On the Galaxy-class ships, the saucer separation was primarily designed as a way for the civilian and non-essential crew to escape to safety in the impulse-powered saucer section, while the senior staff and command crew engaged the threat or entered the potentially dangerous situation in the star drive or battle section. Although highly unadvised, it was possible to separate the saucer from the star drive section at high warp velocities. As soon as the separation occurred, the saucer section would immediately start to lose speed, posing a huge danger to both sections of the ship. However, it was possible with proper care taken. The saucer section was also capable of landing on a planet's surface if need be. This usually required a low, shallow approach angle, and a controlled crash would ensue. The saucer would be generally disabled beyond repair in this instance.
And by 2371, no less than 3 of the initial 6 ships had been lost: the Yamato, the Odyssey, and finally the Enterprise D. The Yamato's loss was particularly horrific, as she was destroyed with her entire complement of crew and families on board. This alarming record led to many changes being incorporated during the refits of the remaining 3 vessels, as well as the construction of the 6 new Galaxy-class ships from the aforementioned space frames. In an alternate timeline, the ship was in fact beefed up to a 3 nacelle design at the request of Admiral Riker, and equipped with many more offensive systems, as the political climate at the time demanded such aggressive upgrades.
Now, this next section is taken almost directly from the Daystrom Institute on Reddit.com's article posted by Brancer. Sadly, though, it is speculated that the Galaxy-class ship design turned out to be a rather embarrassing failure for Starfleet. It was clear that this ship was to be the answer to many of the problems plaguing the mid-24th century Federation. Starfleet lacked newer capital ships and was in a period of relative stagnation. In fact, many of the starships during this period were inferior or aging, such as the Constellation or Excelsior classes. The Galaxy class was to be the answer to those problems. However, the new class fell short in many key areas. These shortcomings demonstrate that the Galaxy class was a failure, mitigated only by the guile of highly proficient and resourceful crews.
And while the Galaxy class was the largest, most advanced space frame for its time, Starfleet engineers essentially created a dud. The ship required the resources of effectively 2 ships, Star Drive and Saucer, and while only gaining a return of 1 moderately powerful ship, in terms of exploration, the Galaxy class was far too valuable to be sent on its own independent 5-year missions, like its predecessor. In fact, it was logical to assume the Galaxy class crews would have expected such a deployment, as many brought their families on board and utilised ample domestic facilities such as schools and daycare. Instead, the ship was used internal to the Federation, often along geopolitical borders, as a deterrent. The Galaxy class had potential to be an excellent long-term exploration cruiser, but was not employed in that capacity. Incorrect utilisation resulted in the loss of 3 of these ships in a 7-year period, far shorter than its projected lifespan of 100 years. Due to the actions of Starfleet Command, it is clear that the Federation ordered an ample explorer when it sadly ended up needing battleships.
The firepower of the Galaxy class was poor for a ship of its size. Though it had extensive phaser arrays and a stout torpedo launcher configuration, the Galaxy class was not a battleship in the same way that its successor, the Sovereign, was destined to become. It was an explorer, first and foremost, and as such, lacked an ability to stand on its own. Every successful operation that involved the Galaxy class had a fleet involved. One only has to look at the USS Odyssey and Enterprise to see how poorly the classes fared in battle. Against the Jem'Hadar, the Odyssey was utterly squashed. In the first volley, the ship was essentially removed from battle, as inherent fragility demonstrated itself. Yes, the shields were ineffective, but as the most powerful ship in Starfleet, it should be able to handle more than 2 hits without shields. Furthermore, its excessive bulk was a liability when ran with a Jem'Hadar attack ship. The same tactic could have been repeated at any point during the Dominion War. Multiple scenes depicting rammings to remove large capital ships.
The Enterprise also demonstrated its frailty. The Enterprise of yesterday's Enterprise engaged 3 Cavort-class battlecruisers, knowing full well the battle was coming. This means battle stations were manned, with the ship being rigged for combat. However, within 4 minutes of battle, the ship suffered from a loss of antimatter containment. Its emergency systems failed, which means no matter how the battle had turned out, the ship would have exploded within 2 minutes. It's important to note this was a ship that was enhanced for combat operations due to the current Klingon War. The Enterprise also demonstrated its weakness in Generations when it fought a retired Klingon bird of prey, a Burrell. It took 4 hits on the unshelled Enterprise to begin its warp core breach process. Here again, the Enterprise won the battle, but lost the conflict, as it was still a total loss for the ship.
Frailty in battle aside, the class had multiple design flaws. On several occasions, the ship was placed in jeopardy as relatively benign threats such as the Binars, and one Lieutenant Commander Data was able to seize the ship remotely. No emergency failsafes existed. The saucer separation feature was seen as a means of maintaining the majority of non-combatants safe in the saucer section while using the star drive section to enter hostile situations. However, its utility was vastly outweighed by keeping the ship whole, as demonstrated by its lack of separation in the majority of risky or dangerous situations. Essentially, instead of having 2 ships that could operate independently, the ship actually created a capable but weakened star drive section, while simultaneously providing a huge liability in the need to defend the saucer.
At any rate, the Galaxy was a very ambitious project and a fantastic ship. Whether it was actually considered a failure or not is debatable, but it is fair to say that with the new Sovereign class design being much more militaristic, that Starfleet definitely went a new direction based on the Dominion War and Borg invasion, and the new unstable political environment surrounding these events.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I think we've come to an end for this episode about the Galaxy class design, but fear not, still lots to come in the way of an interview, discussion with the designer of the ship, Mr. Andrew Probert, as well as episode-specific features and historical events regarding this incredible design. Then, as well, we will, of course, have an episode dedicated entirely to discussion between both Samuel and myself regarding this fantastic, iconic Star Trek ship. So, guys, look forward to those in the future. Until next time, I am Captain Foley.
And I am Commander Cockings, signing off.
See you soon, guys.